Welcome back to Dark Infidelity Story. Tonight isn't loud. It doesn't rush. It's the kind of story that starts ordinary and ends unforgettable. My name's Troy. I'm 28 and I make a living with my hands. Construction work. I live in a quiet suburb just outside Seattle, the kind of place where mornings crawl by under permanent gray skies and nothing ever feels like it's about to change. Every day follows the same pattern. Alarm at 6. A long swallow of bitter black coffee straight from a thermos. No sugar, no cream. Just enough to wake me up. Then I climb into my beat-up Ford truck and drive toward another job site, another version of yesterday. By midday, I'm usually coated in dust, sweat bleeding through my shirt, hands aching from framing walls or pouring concrete. I spend my days helping houses take shape beneath that heavy Washington sky. It's exhausting work, but it's honest. You start with nothing. And by the end of the day, something solid stands where empty space used to be. What I didn't realize back then was this. While I was building homes for strangers, something inside my own life was quietly falling apart. So stay with me, because the truth I uncovered didn't arrive with shouting or drama. It came softly, patiently. And once it revealed itself, there was no way to build things back the same again. When the workday ends, I go back to my place. Calling it an apartment might be generous. Just barely bigger than a garage. A cramped kitchenette that always smells faintly like old takeout. A bed that creaks every time I move, like it's protesting my existence. It's not impressive, but it's mine. I don't have much saved. Just enough to pay rent, keep the lights on, and grab a beer with the guys on Friday nights. No luxury trips. No long-term plans. I learned a while ago how to live without expecting more. There's a rhythm to a life like that. Simple. Predictable. Quiet. And if I'm honest, a little hollow. It had been 2 years since my last date. Not because I was nursing some dramatic heartbreak or betrayal. Nothing like that. I was just tired. Tired of awkward conversations that go nowhere. Tired of forced laughter. Tired of feeling like I was being evaluated, measured, assessed, like a fixer-upper someone might invest in if the cracks weren't too deep. "What's your 5-year plan?" they'd ask. I never had an answer. Mine was more of a daily survival manual than a roadmap. I'd been ghosted, stood up, politely rejected more times than I could count. Eventually, I stopped trying. Solitude felt easier, safer. No expectations meant no disappointment. Sometimes, people don't isolate because they hate connection. They isolate because disappointment hurts less that way. Everything stayed that way until Gloria called. Gloria's been my best friend since high school. The kind of person who doesn't disappear when life gets uncomfortable. We don't talk every day, but when we do, it matters. No small talk. No pretending. "You can't just fade out of your own life, Troy," she said over the phone, half annoyed, half worried. "You're becoming a hermit. One blind date. Just one. If it's awful, I'll buy your beer for an entire month." I laughed. Tried to dodge it. But Gloria knows me better than I know myself. She knew I wasn't living, I was hiding. Eventually, I ran out of excuses and agreed. Not because I believed something magical would happen. Just because saying no felt like giving up entirely. What was the worst-case scenario? Another awkward night I'd forget by morning. The cafe was tucked at the end of a quiet street downtown. Exposed brick walls. Uneven wooden tables that didn't quite match. Warm yellow lights hanging from the ceiling, softening everything. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with cinnamon from pastries behind the glass counter. Somehow, the place made anxiety feel smaller. I arrived 10 minutes early. Old habits from construction die hard. Being late can cost you your job. I chose a table by the window facing the door. Easy to spot her. And if things went badly, an easy path to the parking lot. I scrolled through my phone, rehearsing polite exit lines in my head. "Nice meeting you. Early morning tomorrow." The espresso machine hissed behind the counter. Cups clinked. Conversations blended into background noise. Then she walked in. Her name was Julie. I learned that quickly. She paused just inside the door, took a deep breath like someone bracing themselves. She looked around 30. Shoulder-length brown hair tucked behind one ear. Her eyes scanned the room carefully, not with excitement, but caution. She wore a loose gray long-sleeve shirt and wide-leg jeans. Her shoulders were slightly hunched like she was trying to disappear. When our eyes met, she nodded gently and walked over. "Hi. You must be Troy," she said, sitting down. Her voice was calm, controlled. Her smile polite, but guarded. "That's me. Julie, right?" I said, offering my hand. Her handshake was firm, brief. The beginning was predictable. Work talk. She was a nurse at a hospital, specializing in burn care. Heavy stuff. I told her about construction. Long hours. Hard labor. The satisfaction of building something real. Safe topics. Neutral ground. Then the tone changed. Julie glanced down, tugging lightly at her sleeve. "Look," she said, suddenly direct. "I should probably say this now." She slowly rolled up her sleeve. Her arm was covered in scars. Thick, raised lines. Burn marks that twisted from her wrist upward, disappearing beneath her shirt. They weren't subtle. They weren't faded. They were permanent. A history written into her skin. The cafe faded away. Sounds blurred. Cups. Voices. Everything disappeared. "No one really wants to date me," she said quietly, like she'd rehearsed the sentence 100 times. She watched my face closely, waiting. For discomfort. For pity. For the moment I'd invent an excuse and leave. Vulnerability often isn't about sharing pain. It's about waiting to see who stays. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. Instead, I reached across the table, gently pulled her sleeve back down, not to hide her scars, but to tell her she didn't need to lead with them. "Not here. Not with me. I'm not going anywhere," I said. "And if I walked out right now, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." She studied me, searching for doubt, for dishonesty. I could see fear there, exhaustion, and something fragile beneath it. "Are you sure?" That's when I understood. This wasn't a date anymore. This was a moment, a test of presence, of character. And for the first time in years, I didn't want to run. We sat quietly after that. Not awkward silence, the kind that breathes. The cafe sound slowly returned. The espresso machine. Soft jazz. A couple laughing nearby. Finally, she looked up. "You really want to hear the story?" "If you're okay telling it," I said. She nodded. "It happened 4 years ago. And that's when everything changed." The first thing she remembered wasn't the sound or the panic. It was the heat. Not warmth. Heat so intense it felt alive, like the walls themselves were breathing fire. When she stepped into the hallway, smoke was already choking the air, thick and blinding. She shouted for her parents, her voice swallowed almost instantly. They were in the guest room, farther from the exit. She tried to reach them. But the flames were already crawling up the stairs, moving faster than logic. As she ran, her arm brushed against the railing, wood already burning. That moment changed everything. "That's where most of it came from," she said quietly, gesturing toward her sleeve. The pain was unlike anything she'd ever known. Sure. Overwhelming. But adrenaline doesn't ask permission. It drags you forward whether you're ready or not. She made it outside, screaming for help, lungs burning as badly as her skin. By the time firefighters forced their way in, it was already too late. She told it all without breaking. No shaking voice. No tears. Just facts. The kind of calm that only comes after reliving the same nightmare so many times it loses its edges. "They didn't make it," she said softly. "She survived because she was closer to the door. And for months afterward, she wished she hadn't." The burns covered her left arm and part of her shoulder. 3rd degree in several places. Skin grafts. Infections. Physical therapy that felt like punishment instead of healing. More than a year passed before she could lift something as simple as a coffee cup without pain ripping through her arm. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. I pictured the sirens slicing through rain-soaked Seattle streets. The hospital lights glaring down as doctors worked to save what they could. "And the mirror?" I asked gently. She smiled just barely. The first genuine smile I'd seen from her. "That was the hardest part," she said. For weeks, she avoided reflections. When she finally looked, it felt like facing a stranger. The scars weren't subtle. They were raised, discolored, twisted in ways skin was never meant to be. She tried covering them with makeup at first. It never worked. Eventually, she stopped hiding, from herself at least. From everyone else, though, that was different. Then she turned the question on me. "What about you?" she asked. "You listen more than you talk. Why are you really here?" I leaned back, surprised by how easily the words came. Maybe honesty invites honesty. I told her about growing up poor right there in the suburbs. My dad worked as a mechanic. My mom cleaned houses. We got by, but it always felt like being half a step behind. Other kids had new clothes, vacations, big plans. I had hand-me-downs and summers spent doing odd jobs. That feeling stuck. The sense of never being quite enough. Relationships followed the same pattern. A few girlfriends in my 20s. Same ending every time. "You're a good guy, Troy, but you don't have ambition." The truth was simpler. I was comfortable with simple. And I pulled away before things got real because I was used to people leaving once they noticed the cracks. So I left first. We sat quietly after that. But it wasn't empty silence. It felt connected. Like we'd uncovered the same wound from different angles. Loneliness isn't always about what's visible. Sometimes it's the unseen scars that isolate us most. Julie met my eyes. "So why are you still here?" she asked. I didn't overthink it. "Because you're the first person in a long time who understands what it's like," I said. "Not just surviving, but learning how to live again. And maybe I need that reminder too." She nodded, absorbing it. Then softly she said, "Okay." We talked after that, lighter things. Favorite coffee spots. Seattle weather. How she complained about the rain but secretly loved the fog rolling in off Puget Sound. The heaviness didn't disappear, but it shifted. Like space had been cleared for something real. As the cafe emptied and streetlights flickered on outside, I checked the time. "We don't have to call this a date," I said. "No pressure. No expectations. What if we just try being friends? Two people who don't want to vanish into the world alone." She thought about it, fingers tapping the table. Then she smiled. Not polite. Not guarded. "Real. I'd like that." We paid the bill. Well, I insisted, and stepped out into the cool Seattle evening. The sidewalk was damp from earlier rain. Typical. We didn't hold hands. No promises. No dramatic goodbyes. But as she headed toward the bus stop and I walked back to my truck, something had shifted. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning that didn't demand perfection. Our friendship grew slowly after that. No rush. No pressure. Like fog rolling in off the sound, quiet, steady, impossible to ignore. We exchanged numbers, but there were no frantic messages. A few days later, I sent a simple text. "Hope the week's treating you okay." She replied with a photo of a cloudy Seattle sky. "Better than yesterday." That became our rhythm. We met casually. A park near my job site. Sandwiches from the deli. Coffee she brought. We talked about nothing at first. The rain, work stories, the time I fell off a ladder and bruised my pride more than my body. Eventually, the conversations deepened. She talked about helping burn patients rebuild their lives, and how draining it was to relive her own trauma through them. One evening, after a long day, she texted me. "Rough shift. Want to walk?" We met along a waterfront trail, mist clinging to everything. She wore long sleeves despite the mild weather. "A coworker said something today," she said quietly. "They meant well. You must be so strong." But it brought back the looks, the stares, the pity. After that, she went quiet for days. No messages. No photos. I didn't chase. I didn't pressure. I sent one text. "Here if you need." When she resurfaced, it came with an apology and a promise to explain over coffee. That's when I understood. Her scars weren't just physical. They were armor. A shield forged from loss. And whenever closeness crept in, she pulled back. Not because she didn't care, but because vulnerability still felt dangerous. Healing isn't linear. Sometimes stepping back is the only way someone knows how to protect what still hurts. And for the first time, instead of walking away, I stayed. Julie still covered her scars almost religiously. Long sleeves. Scarves. Layers even when the weather didn't call for them. On warmer days, I'd notice her fingers tugging at the fabric without thinking, like armor she wasn't ready to set down. I never pushed the topic, but I could feel the weight it carried. That quiet fear. The belief that one accidental glimpse might send people running. In a strange way, it reflected my own habits. The walls I'd built around my simple life to avoid being judged. In her, I didn't just see pain, I saw familiarity. Two people surviving by hiding the parts they thought made them unlovable. A few weeks into knowing each other, I mentioned something casually over lunch. A charity build I was volunteering for. A local foundation was organizing it. We were building a small playground at a community center for kids recovering from burns. Everything designed with intention. Shade, soft surfaces, safe spaces. Mattered to me. Years ago, I'd lost a buddy on a job site. Helping like this felt like a way to honor him. "You should come," I said, trying not to make it a big deal. "It's this weekend. No pressure." "I'd like you there." Her expression tightened instantly. "I don't know, Troy," she said quietly. "All those people. I'd just be noticed for the wrong reasons." She glanced at her sleeve. I didn't argue. I understood. Later that night, I sent a message. "If you decide to go, I'll be right there with you the entire time. You don't have to carry it alone." No grand speeches. Just honesty. To my surprise, she showed up. It was a bright Saturday morning. The community center buzzed with energy. Volunteers hammering, kids laughing, the sound of progress everywhere. Then I saw her walking up the path and my breath caught. She was wearing a short-sleeved yellow tee. The first time I'd ever seen her arms fully exposed in daylight. The scars stood out in the sun, winding lines of healed skin that told their story without apology. Her posture was tense at first, arms crossed instinctively, but when she saw me, she lifted a small hand and waved. "Hey," I said, stepping closer and giving her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "I'm really glad you came." She exhaled, eyes scanning the space. A few adults noticed. Some glanced a little too long before looking away. But the kids don't carry the same filters. They rushed her almost immediately. "Whoa, your arm looks like mine," one little boy said, holding up his bandaged hand. They touched her scars with curiosity, not judgment. "Did it hurt? How did you get so cool looking?" Julie froze. Panic flickered across her face. She looked at me. I nodded, silently telling her she was okay. She knelt down slowly. "It did hurt," she said, voice shaky at first. "But you know what? It's like being a fire princess from a story. I fought the flames, and I won." The kids leaned in. She spun a story about a fire princess whose scars were proof of courage. Not damage, evidence of survival. They laughed, asked questions, begged for more. By the end, they were asking her to sign their casts and shirts like she was a celebrity. I stood back watching it happen. Julie wasn't hiding anymore. She was shining. The sunlight hit her face as she laughed. Real laughter, unfiltered, and it hit me all at once. She was beautiful. Not despite the scars, but because of the strength they represented. As the event wound down, she pulled me aside near the new swing set. "I never thought I could do something like that," she said, emotion thick in her voice. "Being seen like that, it terrified me. But having you there made it possible. It made me want to trust again, even if it scares me." I took her hand gently. "I'm scared too," I admitted. "But I think we're patient enough for each other. One step at a time." After that day, something shifted. Things settled into a gentler rhythm. We kept seeing each other. Talking came easier. Trust crept in quietly without forcing itself. She'd text me about a good day at the hospital. I'd send a photo from the site, a half-built frame against the skyline with one word: progress. We weren't rushing. But the walls were coming down, one shared moment at a time. I started looking forward to her messages, to the way her laugh cut through the exhaustion of my days. Then life tested us. Early fall. I'd just gotten home from a brutal shift, muscles screaming from hauling lumber, when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. "This is the hospital. Julie listed you as a contact. She's been admitted for exhaustion after a 36-hour shift. She's stable. But you should come." My chest dropped. I grabbed my keys and drove straight there. Traffic blurred into streaks of red lights and rain-smeared glass. The hospital swallowed me in sterile hallways, beeping monitors, hushed voices. When I found her room, she was lying in bed under fluorescent lights, lines taped to her arm. She looked smaller, fragile in a way that tightened something deep in my chest. "Hey," I said softly, pulling up a chair. Her eyes opened, a weak smile. "You didn't have to come." "Yeah," I said, taking her hand carefully. "I did." She sighed. "I pushed too hard. Back-to-back shifts. A case that hit too close to home." Her voice wavered. My body just stopped. Then the tears came. Not from pain, but exhaustion. "I'm so tired, Troy. Of everything. The scars. The memories. Feeling like I'm always one step away from falling apart. And I hate that you see me like this." I squeezed her hand. "I'm not here for the polished version of you," I said. "I'm here for all of it." She turned away, shoulders shaking. "What if you get tired of this? Of me? Everyone leaves when they realize I'm not whole anymore." That fear was mine too. But I stayed. I held her while she cried. No fixing. No speeches. Just presence. She told me about the nightmares. The survivor's guilt. The terror of being defined forever by that night. I listened. Sometimes healing isn't about answers. It's about being witnessed without judgment. "I'm staying," I whispered. "You're not doing this alone." The next few days blurred together. I took time off work, sat beside her bed, brought tea, read aloud from a beat-up paperback we found in the waiting room, laughing at the ridiculous plot twists. At night, I stayed until the nurses kicked me out, promising I'd be back first thing in the morning. And for the first time, neither of us felt invisible. It was never about big gestures or dramatic promises. What mattered was consistency. Showing up. Following through on what I'd said back at that playground, when words could have easily been empty. When Julie was finally discharged a week later, she looked steadier but still delicate, like someone rebuilding strength piece by piece. I drove her back to her apartment, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood close to the hospital. Her place was warm and inviting. Books stacked everywhere. Plants lining the windowsills. But beneath the coziness, there was a quiet loneliness, the kind that settles in when you've learned to keep people at a distance for too long. She paused at the door, fingers resting on the handle, then turned to me. "Come in," she said. "There's something I want you to see." She led me down the hall to a small room she called her studio. When she flicked on the light, the walls came alive. Canvases everywhere. Abstract figures. Scarred hands. Faces half hidden in shadow, pierced by light. Colors clashing and blending in ways that felt raw and honest. "I started painting after the fire," she said quietly. "It wasn't for anyone else. Just survival." I walked slowly, absorbing the emotion in every brushstroke. "These aren't broken," I said finally. "They're powerful. They tell a story of strength." She stayed near the doorway, arms folded around herself. "Do you ever get scared," she asked, "of staying with someone who might never be fully healed?" I stepped closer, meeting her eyes. "We all carry fractures, Julie. Mine just don't show on the surface. I'm not afraid of yours. I believe we're strong enough to keep walking, together." She nodded, a tear slipping free, followed by a small, genuine smile. We weren't fixed, but we were moving forward side by side. That summer became our turning point, quiet, steady, like Seattle fog lifting without warning to reveal blue sky. We didn't need labels or announcements. No fireworks. No declarations for the world to see. We just started calling each other partners when it felt right. What we built was private, earned through shared vulnerability and showing up on hard days. One weekend in July, we packed a cooler and drove out toward the coast near Olympic National Park. The road wound through dense evergreens, windows down, salt air blending with pine. Julie wore a tank top, another first, her scars fully visible in the sunlight filtering through the trees. I caught myself glancing once or twice. She noticed and smiled. "It feels freeing," she said, stretching her fingers like she was testing the air. At the beach, we laid out a blanket as waves rolled in behind us. Families laughed nearby. Couples passed by. No one stared, or maybe they did, but Julie didn't feel it anymore. She splashed through the shallow water, laughing freely, unguarded. For the first time, she looked completely at home in her own skin. Seeing that, and knowing I'd witnessed the journey to get there, made every hard moment worth it. Not long after, I took her to meet my mom. We drove east to the small town where I grew up, a place of rolling fields and quiet roads. My mom's house hadn't changed much. Modest, a wraparound porch, a garden full of wildflowers she'd planted herself. I was nervous, but when we pulled into the driveway, my mom stepped out, wiping her hands on a dish towel, smiling wide. "You must be Julie," she said, pulling her into a hug without hesitation. No pauses, no stares, just warmth. "You're strong as hell," she added, holding Julie's arms gently. "Come inside. I've got pie in the oven." Later, Julie whispered, "She didn't even ask." That moment sealed something for us. Family wasn't about perfection or blood. It was about acceptance. Back in the city, our lives intertwined more intentionally. We joined a burn survivor support group downtown, attending every other week. Julie began sharing her story openly, her voice growing stronger each time. Inspired by the kids she'd met earlier, she started an art class for children dealing with trauma, teaching them how to turn fear into color. Once a month, she hosted art sessions in a small rented studio. I came along as her unofficial assistant, setting up easels, mixing paints, adjusting lights, snapping photos. "You're my deputy photographer," she'd laugh, "and head of tea operations." My work life didn't change. Still long hours, still rain-soaked days. But now, at the end of every shift, someone was waiting. "Heading back. Take out?" Her replies were always simple. A heart, a smile, hurry home. Those small routines mattered more than we realized. They built something steady. They turned me into us. One evening, as autumn settled in, we sat on her balcony watching the city lights flicker on below us. The air was sharp and clean. Julie leaned into me, her scarred arm resting easily against mine. "I used to think no one could really love someone like me," she said quietly. "Not with all of this." She traced the raised lines along her forearm. I pulled her closer. She smiled, the kind that reaches the eyes. "Turns out," she whispered, "it only takes one person willing to stay. You've helped me heal in ways I didn't think were possible." I kissed the top of her head. "We don't need perfection," I said. "We don't need guarantees. We just need to keep showing up." We watched the sun disappear, the sky fading into soft shadows. And in that silence, I finally understood something important. Happiness isn't about erasing the storms you've survived. It's about choosing to face the next ones together, and refusing to let go when it matters most. After everything we endured, peace didn't arrive loudly. It simply stayed. If this story moved you, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Dark Infidelity Stories for more real stories of love, loss, and healing. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.